Welcome to the fourth part of the High Performance Imports V1 commentary series. This part is entirely drag racing at the Central Circuit drag strip, which is really just the main straight of Central Circuit in Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. At the time, that was one of only three places that they did drag racing. There was Central Circuit, Fuji Speedway, and the Sendai Highland dedicated drag strip. There was absolutely no preparation on the track, which will be pretty obvious from the way these cars get away. This is a street drag meeting, so basically everyone is running street legal tyres. The vast majority back then were using Nitto radial drag tyres. Also, the vast majority of cars drag racing in Japan in those days used manual transmission. There were almost no automatics. Other thing to keep in mind when you look at the times these guys are running, they're all running on pump fuel, so they weren't able to run E85 or any other alcohol blend fuels like that. There was also no nitrous, and the computers that people could use for tuning in Japan at the time were really limited. There was they had the Power FC, I think, was already available then. The shops that could afford them had the HKS V Pro, the gold computer you see in a lot of the drag cars back then. And then a lot of shops had their own tuned ROM, which was just a factory computer with an altered chip in it, basically. So you really can't compare a car that's tuned in the last 5 years with something that was tuned back then. It was a pretty different kettle of fish.
Central Circuit is located in the Hyogo Prefecture, an hour west of Osaka. The main straight is regularly used for HKS street drag meetings, where pretty much any car can enter so long as it has street legal tyres. This sees an amazing variety of cars hitting the track, including classics like this 1971 GDR.
Some people might be surprised to hear that. The original Hakosuka GC10 or KPGC10 GTR did actually come in a four-door version as well as a two-door. You pretty much only see pictures of the two-door these days, but there was a four-door version back then.
We'd like to see these two race. Our money's on the Nissan. Even with sticky Nitto 555R tyres, the two-wheel drive cars have a lot of trouble with traction. Keep your eye on this red Supra.
Yeah, it was a pretty sketchy track, actually. It wasn't even particularly smooth, so it was pretty hard work in a powerful car. You can see just before that how close they are to the fence at the start of the straight there, because they've really only got just enough room there to do drag racing.
A lot of drivers seem to use the rev limiter as a shift indicator. Though GDRs are the fastest, some drivers prefer the challenge of making a rear-wheel drive Skyline run fast times.
Times I'm putting up there are actually what's on the timing board. You can see in the top right there. Unfortunately, it didn't display mile per hour, so we don't know what the terminal speeds were. In most cases, I think it'd be higher than you're expecting for that sort of a ET.
S13 Silvias and 180 SXs are very popular for drag racing in Japan. They are cheap to buy and easy to modify, but the rear suspension is not really ideal for drag racing. Despite this, we saw plenty of cars running deep into the 10s. The S15 shape is rarely seen on the drag strip, as it is slightly heavier than the older S13.
See in the background there all the people standing watching. All they've got holding them back is just a piece of rope, basically. They're pretty casual about the safety back in those days.
This 180SX, built by Top Fuel, has a massive Truss T88 34D turbo.
What I was doing here, I had one camera that was on a tripod so that I wouldn't miss things, and then I was hand filming each run as well. And then whenever they were having a break, I'd go into the pits and the area behind the pits and try and get more shots like that shot we just saw of the engine bay there.
This is great for top-end power, but if you bog down on the line, you have to play catch-up, like this. Front-wheel drive cars are not as popular for drag racing in Japan as they are in America. You only see a few Hondas and the odd Toyota, like this AE101 Trueno. Smaller four-wheel drive cars are also overshadowed by the GDR. You almost never see a WRX on the strip, but this EVA 4 Lancer built by HKS Kansai is a consistent performer.
That's one of the few times I was standing up the other end of the strip to get an impression of the speed of the car coming by. It was pretty rare back then to see an Evo being used as a drag car or a Subaru, because at the time there weren't many options for the gearbox. And if you were running a standard gearbox, you tend to go through a lot of gearboxes.
Older cars like this classic 240ZG add flavour to the event. This naturally aspirated model ran mid-12s all day. This car had a secret under the bonnet. The owner of this old Sora, however, was happy to show off his tough 2JZ GTE Super engine. Though they seem worlds apart, these two are a very close match. you race a rotary in Japan, you're racing an RX-7. Series 5 and 6 RX-7s are a class in their own right at street meets.
Point there is it's very different to Australia and other places like Puerto Rico, where you'll get a lot of the older rotaries, RX2, RX3, and so on. It is literally FC RX7 onwards that you'll see drag racing over there. Those are earlier models. They think they belong in museums. Another thing with the RX-7s over there, I don't think I ever saw one running at a 20B triple rotor from a Cosmo, which were popular for a time here in Australia, although now they're extremely rare. So it was usually the original 13B.
Look out for that wall. Series 5 RX-7s are as cheap as Sylvias in Japan and seem to run similar times. Rev Speed magazine are using one as their project car. Great paint, but it's not the fastest thing out there.
I'm not sure that magazine exists anymore, but it used to be quite a good tuning car magazine.
It's amazing how close to standard some of the Series 6 RX-7s look, yet they still run times like this.
FDs were only about, at most, 9 or 10 years old back then, so they're still a fairly expensive car to take drag racing. Of course, they're worth an awful lot more now.
Other cars are far from normal looking. This kitted RX-7 is a regular sight at Central Circuit, with its unusual headlights and of course T88 34D turbo. This second yellow RX-7 has a matching body kit. It also has a bit of a ground clearance problem. On its second
I have to check later, but I think that was an Aria Mamiya body kit. If it wasn't, I won't put this bit in.
run, it showed what it can really do. The two-wheel drive cars are impressive, but let's face it, when you go to the drags in Japan, there's just one thing you want to see. It's rare to see a street drag GTR run slower than a 10.
Someone in the background there said Oshi, meaning he nearly got into the nines, but not quite.
You can always count on an impressive launch. The R32s seem to squirm the most off the line, but there's no question about the advantage of four-wheel drive on street tyres. R33s are less popular due to higher cost and slightly more weight, but they're not slow.
I guess that's true. The R33 came out in 95, so when this video was done, they're only about 6 years old.
Japanese drivers are quick to back off if their car has a problem. With engines costing more than $50,000 to build, you don't really want to break anything.
There are a couple of cars there from Avance. I think we're from Gifu. Back then, they had a yellow car, which was the quickest street R32 in the world, I guess. Something you see very often, twin exhaust on a GTR. In case you're wondering, this isn't all of the racing from that day. I was there literally all day. So 20 minutes is actually cutting it down a fair bit.
This 1200 horsepower R33 built by Endless has run a best time of 8.97. It's one of only 5 GDRs that have run an 8 on street tyres.
True back then. Great sounding car.
There are so many R32s at a meet like this, it's hard to tell them apart.
I think it had 3240 HKS turbos. From memory, you couldn't actually get a 3540 yet, and it came out maybe a year or two later. The burnouts might seem pretty over the top, but the thinking back then with the Nittos is that they really needed to be very hot to get close to the performance of a normal drag slick.
It's rare to see a parachute on a street drag car. If they do have one, it only gets used in emergencies.
That might well be the advanced car that was later painted yellow. Someone can let me know in the comments.
Some HPI readers will recognise this Machina R33 from our last GDR special. Runs mid-9s, but that sort of smoke is always bad news.
Yep, that looks like a pretty bad engine failure there. Probably a rod out the side.
The Signal R34 is without doubt the best presented drag car we have ever seen. Featuring Missouri paint that shifts from green to blue to violet, it looks more like a show car than a 9-second drag car.
Missouri was the popular brand in Japan at the time of that color shifting paint, which I remember that year probably about a third of the cars at the auto salon had it. another
The
car.
2.8 litre engine certainly has the goods though. It uses a pair of HKS 3240 turbos.
I was about to say that was another car running 3240s. At that meeting, there were only a couple running those turbos, but the 3037s were very popular.
Even the inside has been painted to show standards, with a pair of everyday race seats. The twin 3-inch exhaust system features a pair of carbon fibre mufflers. Suspension is by Cusco and Team.
It all checks out.
.3, not bad for a first run. Let's see what it does this time.
Hard to remember now. I think that R34 did eventually get into the eights, but not very far into the eights. Again, if someone remembers better, you can put it in the comments below.
The fastest car at this event was a surprisingly plain looking but very neat R32 built by Garage Original. It uses smaller 3037 turbos that make it a real monster off the line.
So there you go. Not a single car made it into the eights at that meeting. But this is 2001, so low nines was still pretty good. Anyway, that's the last part of High Performance Imports V1. I'll be doing High Performance Imports V2 soon. Cheers.